What's good, everybody? It's your boy Big Nate. Welcome to Big Nate's Book Reviews, some of the best book reviews. And today we are talking about a bunch of books that changed my life. So I got my doobie right here. It is ready to be sparked. And today we are smoking this one, not to overshare or like be cringe or whatever, but we're smoking this one for my grandpa who passed away last week. So if you got your doobie at home, go ahead and spark that. And then we are smoking this one for David Sherian, a man who very much, like these books, changed my life. Not to be a Debbie Downer. It's like, damn, bro, he killed the vibe. But nah, let's get, we got a dope video in store. I'm excited to talk about it. So today we are talking about books that changed my life. Books that have in some way had like a particular impact on me. And what I was gonna do originally was like, go through my bookshelves and see which one of the books are the ones that I remember as being like particularly memorable. But then I'm like, nah, you know what? You shouldn't have to look through your bookshelf. You shouldn't have to look at GOODREADS to know the books that change your life. So rather than that, I went on a nice long walk and I just thought about it. I'm like, what are the books books for which there is a Big Nate before the book and a Big Nate after the book? And as it turns out, there's quite a bit of them. So without further ado, wait or delay, let's get into the very first book. So the first book that changed my life, I would argue, is A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. So I'd say this book changed my life for a number of reasons. The first one being that this was the first time I ever really, truly, I feel like, got into like classic literary fiction. Like, this is the book that opened my eyes to like that side of the world. And so, by the way, too, I'm not doing like sentimental shit. No middle school or fucking even really high school. This one is like the one exception because it was like in my, I think it was senior year, we were reading Hemingway and I'm like, okay, this is dope. But this is just a point in my life where it's like, I'd always kind of read, although not as much, honestly. But when I did read, it was shit like, spy thrillers and mysteries and a little bit of horror and stuff, which, don't get me wrong, I love all that. But I didn't really do literary fiction. And this was a book, again, like, first off, like something about the, don't judge a book by its cover, but at the same time, there is a certain magic allure to covers. Because, this thing kind of popped out at me when I was at a bookstore. First time in like the literature section, and like I heard of Hemingway from class, and I'm like, yeah, let's try this. And I just fell in love with the writing. Say what you will about Hemingway, I know he's a controversial figure, and I know people actually particularly don't like his writing, but for me at the time, very much like this just put me on. Like, this book tapped into a whole different side of me as a reader that I had not experienced until then. And it also got, not only did it just get me into like classic literary fiction, also just got me reading more. Like, this is a time in my life, I feel like, after, because then I read more Hemingway, and then I got put on to Steinbeck, and I was big on Vonnegut, and it was like, at this point in time, it's like reading kind of became part of my like identity. So I was thinking at this point, like, I read it late high school, so then I'm like, yeah, it's one of my favorite books, blah blah blah. But then I'm like, is it just one of my favorite books because I have sentimental value, or do I really like it? So in late college days, I reread it, and that shit hit every bit as hard. I haven't read The Sun Also Rises for a while, and I never quite got through For Whom the Bell Tolls. But this to me is Hemingway's best book. But so I was reading that shit, and then at work, bro, I was like, it was quiet, like low, or what's the word? Not busy. It was low key, one might say. So I'm just reading this shit, and I made the mistake of finishing that book on my shift, or like in the middle of my shift. And if you know that, I'm not gonna say anything, but if you know the end of the book, you will understand the fact that I looked right over to my coworker. I was like, if you'll please excuse me. and I just went to the bathroom, and I just sat in the fucking stall, and I was like, damn, bro, that shit's crazy. So yeah, I'll always have a special place in my heart for A Farewell to Arms. And in fact, I want to reread it again just to see how my relationship with this book changes over the years. But I remember it very fondly. And the writing too, like, I'm telling you, like, I really like Hemingway as a writer. His use of character, what he does with dialogue too. He reveals so much in so little. And that's not even just like the dialogue part. Like, that's just little details about the character, little details about the landscape. He captures the thing that makes like whatever it is, like the essence of. Anyway, bro, I'll be going off too much. Up next, we have The Idiot. I need to hurry this up because I feel like my video's been going too long lately. Up next, Dostoevsky's The Idiot. So this book was, I mean, for one, it was just like a literary achievement kind of thing for me. That was my first real, like, damn, bro. Like, it is kind of a flex that I read this, especially like, you know, back in the day. But yeah, The Idiot is like the reason it's like an accomplishment is because this, I feel like I remember it being longer than this, but because like this book is deeply like philosophical, and this was the first time I'd ever seen that done in a book. You know, I do think every good piece of literature has some philosophy, but Dostoevsky is like equal parts philosophy, equal parts literature. Like in my philosophy classes, I always assigned excerpts of like Dostoevsky. Had nothing to do with literature, like for my philosophy. So anyway, I was really feeling it. This is the first time I'd seen anything like that happen, and especially at such a scale. And then I was also like, this is also one of the things that got me into like just straight up philosophy in general, like just pure, like straight up no literature stuff, just like in the actual like philosophy section. And that, you know, that for sure changed my life, bro. That for sure. I like philosophy. I would say I like philosophy. And I owe, I think, a lot of that to The Idiot, because it's like, again, it is deeply philosophical. It had me questioning like fundamental beliefs, I feel like, as I remember it, at least, about like, you know, about like God and spirituality and morality and just life, bro. Just like Dostoevsky will make you think, bro. But up next, we have Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. So this book is an interesting one, and it's distinct from all my other books because it's like, you know, for one, it's like factual. It's very grounded in like reality. And then on top of that, you know, it's not like, you know, The Idiot, Farewell to Arms. It's like, it's like almost like a social and like political book. Except, I mean, it deals with themes of that, but it's like really what it is the story of Booker T. Washington literally working his way up from slavery. By the way, for all these books, I was going to reread the descriptions and stuff, but I'm like, nah, bro, I got to do it based off how Big Nate remembers it. But yeah, he basically just, bro, he got it out the mud, literally. Like, he was born into slavery, worked his way basically with like this crazy work ethic and this straight like need for education, to the point where this fool is fucking sleeping under sidewalks and shit, and he's walking miles to go to fucking like school, and school is like a little, as our like outhouse with like 10 kids, like, who the teacher probably doesn't even know, like that kind of shit. And but like you fall, it's a like very inspiring story, because you see him basically literally from slavery work his way up to like head of the Tuskegee Institute, leading historical like leader in social rights and black activism. So it was like and it was just written really well too, and I was just like, whoa, this again. Also the thing with education, it was like big, because I was at the time at community college. And by the way, okay, slight tangent, but dude, they're getting rid of, in universities, they're getting rid of physical libraries, and that's a bummer, because two of these books, bro, I just kind of like picked out, or like Up From Slavery, I picked out from, just because I was walking through the halls, not even the halls, just like the shelves, and I was like, oh, what's this? And I was like, Booker T. Washington. I'm like, okay, that's just a cool name, Loki. So I checked it out and I read it, and boom, now it's one of my favorite books. But they're getting rid of libraries, physical libraries, to make room for computers. The fuck? Anyway, college. I'm going to college at the time, and this is everybody knows this if you're going to college. It's like we treat lecture and like homework as like a chore. Like, it's annoying to have to go to lecture, and it's like annoying. Like, that shit just keeps getting in the way. And it's like, dude, then you have Booker T. Washington literally doing the most to get even the most basic education. Anyway, yeah, bro. And like, we have these beautiful campuses and teachers, and it's like, bro, and then we be cheating. I'm the worst of it, but I cheated through my whole English degree. There's so many books I didn't read because I just fucking, what's it called, Spark Notes, and I just did myself dirty, and Booker T would be disappointed. I bet I did my work that semester. Up next, we have East of Eden by John Steinbeck. And yeah, this one kind of comes as no surprise, but the reason it like stands out to me is it's like East of Eden, all these other books, it's like Hemingway, A Farewell to Arms, yeah, I got some critiques. The Idiot by Dostoevsky. Yeah, I might edit down a couple of things. East of Eden is just in all respects an all around completely like amazing book. Like this is what I say about this book is that every element of story that there is to do that it does well. Like character, bro. There is literally every type of personality that like a human, not completely, but like there is so many different types of people, like characters in this book. And then you have people like Samuel and Lee who are just like some of the all-time greats of fiction, I feel like. So just character, and then dialogue like has right to do with the aspect of character, bro, because it's like some of my favorite scenes are literally where it's like Samuel, Lee, and Adam just like at night, I feel like with a cup of coffee and just talking, and it's like, bro, I'm turning that page, and those are the most captivating and memorable parts of the book for me. And then I mean, you already know, it's like multi-generational story. So you see the history and the technology and everything else change across the novel, and you follow this whole lineage, and then so the scope of the story is just like fantastic, and it's a very much a presence of the book, very much like the next book I'm going to talk about too. But also setting, dude, his descriptions of the landscape of the Salinas Valley, California landscape are like good. One might say stunning, and the writing is also really freaking good in this book. It reads like butter. I tell people that it's like I almost want to recommend this for people trying to get into literature, just because the writing is so good. But this shit is like over 500. It's almost 600 pages. But bro, you just glide through that like butter, bro, for real. But also one thing about this book, and then I'll stop talking about it, is it's what I call like insightful, because he has all these little observations about human life and human nature that I think are just like deeply on point. Like there's one he talks about, this like one that comes to mind is when he talks about like seeing your parents grow up, realizing that your parents are real people, flawed human people. He describes it as something like an idol, like a bright shining some shit that gets like dropped in like muck, like yellow or green slime, green muck, and like you can clean it off, but it's never gonna shine the same way that it used to. And it's like, dang, bro, like that's the process of growing up and realizing your parents. And the book is full of shit with like that, bro. Like next time I read this book, because I've read it twice, next time I read this, I'm gonna start taking some of that shit down, because that's some life shit right there. East of Eden. Okay, up next, 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It is also one of those multi-generational watch history and technology. That's a huge part of 100 Years of Solitude. But the thing for me about this book is, to me, the writing is just literally just brilliant. Like, it's some of the best writing that I personally have ever read. And I want to point out too, I tried reading this like a few years ago, and I got through like a quarter, and then I was confused and shit, and I had this DNF. So I'm just saying, sometimes you're right book, wrong time. Because when I reread, I was actually kind of dreading reading this, like for whatever my book challenge. But nah, dude, that shit's like, this is easily one of the best books I've ever read in my life. And the way I describe it is, it's like there's just something like about this story. There's just something true. There's something that is like directly speaking to what it is to be like a human being, bro. Like I was thinking about this book literally, you know, everybody says this shit, but I was thinking about this book for weeks after I read it, and I still think about it. It's still a book that comes up for me. And it's got magical realism. That's another fundamental part. That's why I really like this cover. It's very tropical, exciting, diverse, fantastical with the symbols and shit. Because yeah, that's a huge part of this story that just makes this thing such a pleasure to read, bro. But so yeah, shout out Marquez. Also, this book, I'm not going to elaborate. This book is deeply mythical with all the cycles and the symbol. But oh, one thing too, bro. I did a book review for this, and I talked about it elsewhere. I like everything I said about it there, but the problem is like I don't like that book review because there's so much I didn't say. Like there's so much more. I feel like I couldn't do it justice, and it showed. But so I'm 1,120% gonna read this book again, and I hope soon. In which case, I'm gonna do another book review, bro. 100 Years of Solitude. Okay, up next here, I gotta put a Dewey down for this one. Up next is honorable mention, because at first I was gonna do 5 books that changed my life, but I guess it doesn't matter, bro. But the collected works of Borges, short fiction of Borges. and Kafka, the short stories. And I haven't even finished reading this, and it's still changed my life. And there's probably more. I'm sure there's more Borges short stories besides these two that I need to read. Yeah, these two have a very special place in my heart, and that's because, like, just most immediately, they've had a deep impact on, and they've changed my life because they've had a deep impact on my writing. They do in these short stories like what I have never seen. Like, this is what I say too, is like I kind of read a lot, or like, you know, I read, I'm familiar with the lay of the land. And it's like, I've never read writers like Borges and Kafka as original and just like so good. And it's funny because these are two very different people, like writers, but what they have in common is just that originality of thought, and they're deeply philosophical. And it's like all their stories are just, gets my podcast, and you can see this happening in real time. Big Nate Short Story Club, home of the best short story clubs. We've done stories in each one of these books, but all the stories of Borges and Kafka are like infinitely interpretable, bro. Like, the more you read it, the more interesting and rich the stories become. So it's like, yeah, I don't know, whatever. But get to my podcast. I've talked at length about both of these people, but okay, I would say that about wraps it up. Of course, there are plenty of other books that have changed my life that didn't quite make the cut. I think every book really changes your life when you think about it in some way, shape, form, or another. It becomes a part of you. Ooh. But let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know some of books that have changed your life. And get to, for real, you really, why would you at this point just not get to my podcast? We just did a podcast with Jared Henderson of the Classical Mind. You might have heard of him. Yeah, get to my podcast, Big Nate Short Story Club. We talk about the ones who walk away from OMELAS. It's fire. And thank you for get to my Instagram too, Big Nate's Book Reviews, which is in fact home of the best book reviews. Follow me on Goodreads, and thank you for watching Big Nate's Book Reviews, home of the best book reviews.